We are live. I'm Father James. This is the Barely Protestant YouTube channel. We had a few technical difficulties because, this is my channel and that's how things roll here. No, it's become a weird thing recently. I used to be able to just seamlessly go onto StreamYard and everything would already be connected automatically as far as audio and my microphone and all that sort of stuff is concerned, right? The listening and input and output and all that. But the past few times, I have to fiddle around with the audio stuff, especially with the not the microphone, but with the headphones. And I've been using these headphones for a while, but it's just for whatever reason been constantly not putting it in the proper settings. And so I've got to fiddle around with two or three different systems, trying to figure out how to get it all put up. So yeah, it's kind of frustrating. Anyway, we are having a fun time today. Well, I was hoping to go to a festival that I'd forgotten about until an hour before I went to this. And I was like, I want to do both, but okay. I already said I was going to do this, so we're doing this. So no festival for me today. This is all for you guys. It's a Celtic festival too. All right. So anyway, if you do not know who Professor Dave is, he is someone who's become recently unhinged the past, I don't know, 4 or 5 years maybe or so. I used to really love his channel. I used to listen to a lot of his science stuff because I mean, I'm not professionally trained as a scientist, which is why I'm not going to be talking about the science part on this. I'm going to be talking about the thing that I'm much more, the biblical issues that I'm much more, decent at, I should say, Anyway, so here we are. Professor Dave used to just do his thing with science and, have evolution, have biology, have chemistry, physics, even all that fun stuff, right? Then he started getting into this anti flat earther, which is great. Flat earth stuff is wrong. And then he started getting into from there anti-creationist stuff, which that obviously goes over science. So I'm not saying how dare he try to argue against creationists, right? But then he started just getting into an anti-religion and anti-Christian specifically, anti-theist sort of mode, where he's become this sort of new atheist guy, which didn't that die out 10 years ago, the new atheist stuff. Oops, hope you didn't hear that. Maybe you did. All right. Yeah, Dr. James Tour. I saw that. That was the culmination of it all. That was insane. I don't think Dr. James Tour is a creationist. I'm almost positive he's not a 6-day creationist, but the guy hates Tor. And the guy is Dr. James Tor, I think, has 2 doctorates, I think, or maybe 1, but in chemistry or biology or something like that, is a prominent scientist in his field, well known, well respected, and this guy Dave, who doesn't even have a doctorate, might have some sort of master's in some sort of biochemistry or something like that, is just mocking and belittling and cussing him out. I think even it's really pathetic. Anyway, yeah, so Dave has kind of gone crazy. I mean, he responded to Matt Walsh on the transing thing when Walsh put out "What Is a Woman," and then Walsh tore that down, and Dave got butthurt about that. Anyway, it's kind of crazy. So what we're doing today is I saw his the definitive guide to debunking creationists part 3, evolutionary biology and paleontology. Now, if you'll notice the red bar, we are going at minute 36 and 33 seconds, right? We're going at that timestamp. I am not arguing today against the physical evidence for biological evolution as understood by somebody like Professor Dave. Professor Dave. I don't. Is he a professor? I don't remember. I don't. He calls himself that, but that might be just a YouTube thing. Anyway, by Dave or any other proponent of evolution. That is not my goal here. The reason I don't do that is I am not a biologist, as one of our now justices reminds us. So, as although I mean, I can tell what a woman is, uh, but yeah, I am not someone who is an expert in biology or chemistry or anything that would have to do with defending or refuting biological evolution as understood by the consensus of scientists today. All right. So, what I'm trained at more is on understanding the scriptures. I'm more trained on a philosophical or conceptual mind, which you'll notice that atheists do not, by and large, most by far, especially like the new atheists, do not have a mature understanding of philosophy. It's really lacking, and I think this you could see that behind this with the critiques that Professor Dave gives. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go over this short section that's on biblical stuff, because he makes some really odd claims here. So with all that understood, let's go ahead and go. All right.
With the fossil record covered, let's cover some more problems creationists face when trying to view the variety of life from a biblical lens. First, the people who wrote the Bible were completely clueless when it comes to biology. Those who believe the Bible was written by God are worshiping an allegedly omniscient God that had a practically non-existent understanding of his own creation. Leviticus 11:19 and Deuteronomy 14:18 say that bats are birds. They're not. They're mammals.
All right. Now, I don't know how long this video is going to be because this can be so easily debunked by just the slightest critical thought. All right. And in fact, he talks about this later and contradicts himself really in this. Okay. Now, I want to ask you something. When do you think our classification of animals, of creatures, was that we use today in biology, right? When do you think that first started? Something like in the 16 or 1800s at best. I looked it up a few days ago. It's called Linnaean classification, based on Linnaeus, right? I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. So, in other words, we have a particular classification that we use today based on a, what is it, 19th century, or maybe somewhere between the 17th century and 19th century. I can't remember. Which that's fine. That's great. Awesome. The idea that you have to impose that upon a system, or not even really a system, right? Because they're not actively trying to make this a sort of like biological system for creatures in the ancient world, that you have to that you demand that people use that exact system back then is just insane. All right. There's much more of a functionality to it. So, for instance, a bird would be just a winged thing, right? A winged thing that has blood, right? Something like that. Or that demonstrates that it breathes. So it has some sort of you can tell that it breathes through its movement, right? Through the breathing structures and everything. Oh, I love this. Professor Reddit explains. Yes. Oh, yes. So I use Reddit for, I don't even actually really use it much anymore, but I use it for board game stuff, but that's about it. Reddit is a cesspool. It's horrible. I don't know if I mentioned this already, but this is one of my favorite mugs. It is Jesus is my savior. The Legend of Zelda is my therapy. Because Legend of Zelda is one of the greatest, contains some of the greatest stories in modern storytelling. And I've actually done a talk on that. I think I have it recorded here. Anyway, so here we are understanding, well, look, it says all fowls that creep going upon all. Oh, wait, not that one yet, but we'll get into that one in a second. this misunderstanding where, well, because they are categorized in a particular way as what's translated as bird today, which if I'm remembering the Hebrew, it's really more like winged thing or something like that. One with wings, or of the wings, or something like that. But here we are, like, nope, you have to use this Linnaeus. And if I'm mispronouncing that, I'm probably going to sound like an idiot, but forgive me, whatever. This modern classification system, which we have to do for whatever reason, or you're just an idiot. Even if you go back into time and you're reading ancient books, you have to use the system, or else you're just an idiot and you're wrong. You're objectively wrong. More than an idiot, you're wrong, right? It's kind of silly. Oh, yes. All right. Yes. Missing trails. The old, if Sky Daddy knew anything, he'd communicate to the ancient Hebrews according to the 21st century Western understandings of the world argument. Yes. I love it. It is such an obviously idiotic argument. And like, this part is completely superfluous. You don't need this in this video. Like, he's bringing up things that prior to this that are just good science as far as I can tell from what I understand and everything. I'm not like, you didn't need to bring this part up where you're attacking scripture. But and again, I'm saying this as someone who's not a biologist. I don't like, it sounds like, oh wow, that is interesting. That is food for thought. That is something that I would like to learn more about, right? Most of the other parts, from what I remember, again, I only went through that other part once, but then I came across this and I was like, okay, this is kind of sad. All right, and let me point this out. All right, I'll give an example, an analogy with this issue with his, objective classification argument, right? So I'm looking at my bookshelf here. I'm looking at my bookshelf there. I have my bookshelf arranged a particular way. I have the books classified a particular way. Okay. So I'll take this with me. You've got, let's see, I've got Roman Catholic and Anglican connected right there for some no, that one's Roman Catholic right there, the third one from the top. My heresy books are on the top left, on that left one. So I have Tillich up there. I've got that Carrier book. I've got Pagels. I've got all sorts of crazy Hans Kung, all that, right? I got my Star Wars down there. I've got more sci-fi and more books I like. I've got like Dracula there. I've got the Historian. Then I've got my Shaft collection in the middle here. I don't know if you see where I'm pointing. It doesn't quite matter. I'm really now just trying to impress you all with my books and everything, right? I've got my Shaft collection, so early church history, and I've got other early church history, early church fathers books right over with that, right? But then I also have like pseudepigraphal stuff. And then on the top in the middle, I've got my Anglican stuff, top 2 ones, well, top 3 actually. Commentaries on the bottom, prayer books on the top right. I've got them classified in particular ways, okay? So, with all of that understood, suppose Dave comes to my office, right? And he says that I'm objectively an idiot and wrong, factually wrong, because I have classified and arranged my books a particular way here, right? For instance, you have fictional books on the right bookshelf and fictional books on the left bookshelf, and why aren't they together? They objectively need to be together. No, I have them there because of a variety of decisions I have made, right? And one decision over the other is not necessarily objectively wrong, all right? And then what if he comes and says, well, no, you need to do it by author, alphabetical order author. It's much easier. It's a much more streamlined. Oh, well, it might be more streamlined, but you know what? Maybe I like the way it looks, right? So this is the critique that he is bringing to the scriptures on this bird and bat thing. They're classifying things based upon, as far as we can tell, and they're not really actively sort of classifying. They see something that flies. Yeah, it's a little weird, but anything that flies. And it has, has, quote, the breath of life. So it has lungs and breathes, right? In the sort of regular sense that we think of with that. Not breathes the way like an insect might breathe, So they're classifying it that way, if we can even use that terminology. That doesn't make them wrong. There's nothing wrong with objectively having a classification system in which, why did I have the word objectively there? In having a classification system that puts a bat among the birds, right? Which he'll contradict later, but we'll get to that in a second. So yeah, that's just conceptually idiotic, this critique.
Leviticus 11:20-23 says that some insects have 4 legs. They do not. They all have 6. The book of Jonah refers.
Yes, again, because we classify insects today specifically and explicitly and exclusively, or maybe not exclusively, but part of being an insect is having 6 legs, right? There are bugs that have, for instance, 8 legs, spiders, right? Also, there are 2 things that go on with this part. The first one is, I mean, if you look at, for instance, like a grasshopper, right? It's got the 4 regular legs and then the 1 set of legs that help it jump, right? Which may or may not be classified in the ancient world as legs proper, right? It would be like saying that we have 4 legs. It's like, well, maybe you can think of these other limbs as legs because we can get on off, and we're going to get into this part in a second. But like, it's a different classification. How are you understanding limbs? Are we using the term limb? Are we using the term leg, arm, etc.? Now, talks about on all fours. And I looked in the Hebrew with this. I looked in the Hebrew with the bird thing too. It's just the word fours, like with the implication of all fours, right? Now, we do this today with our understanding of sunrises and sunsets, right? We use idioms. We use these terms that don't mean exactly what we're saying, but they get the idea across. So you talk about a sunrise or a sunset. The sun itself is not necessarily the thing that is moving, unless you're a geocentrist, right? Which, interestingly enough, that is a really interesting debate about that, but we won't go into that here, right? But the average person, right? Geocentrism is not true. The sun is the thing that is, well, it's not stationary. It is moving, but the Earth itself is orbiting around the sun, right? So Dave believes that, but Dave is not a geocentrist, but Dave will still use terms like sunrise and sunset. And if he's not, I mean, there are plenty of people in the scientific community who use that regularly with no problem. And I doubt Dave is going to say that they are idiots who are geocentric Neanderthals, right? So we understand idioms being used. So we talk about going on all fours. Well, what, all 4 legs? No. We have 4 limbs, right? But we're not implying that we believe that these are legs, right? So that would be the similarity with this. We're talking about going on all fours, maybe, or whatever. In other words, that they don't have independent limbs that they use primarily for non-walking activity, right? So that would be the idea with it. And then this next one, the whale fish thing, which is this is like peak new atheist. All right. The only thing he's missing is the critique of Jesus allegedly saying whale when the Old Testament says fish and all that sort of stuff, right? So this goes again. Well, let me watch the video part.
Refers to a whale as a big fish. Whales are not fish. They're mammals. Genesis 30:37, 40.
All right. So whales are not fish, they're mammals. Again, going back to that classification thing, they're not biologically sort of observing, well, it's a mammal because we have classified mammals in such a way. it is something, it's just a big thing that is in the ocean, right? It is a big thing that, well, in the sea, because they're talking about the Mediterranean, right? It is a big fish. So actually, I'm not even sure if there would be whales in the Mediterranean. It can go either way, because they don't have that distinction in the Old Testament text, the Hebrew, between whale and big fish. For them, a whale is a big fish, right? So it could go either way. But this again goes to this demand that you hold to a particular classification system that was invented like thousands of years after, 2,000 years after, 3,000, 2 or 3,000, something like that. I love this one. Professor surprised to find the writer 3,000 years ago doesn't know that whales are actually mammals. Jesus said a seed has to die. We all know that's not what happens. A moment of science. I mean, these are just the silliest. It's like, you know, the scriptures don't talk about these sort of elements insofar as the Greco-Roman sort of or the Greek understanding is, like, right, the 4 elements, which has some problems if you think that those are like the 4 fundamentals, right? But if you think of it as just sort of 4 basics, you know, kind of thing, I'm not going to fault them for that, right? I'm not saying that. This is even less than that, because this is a classification. This is just a different set of classification, a different way to classify things, which he goes into. And I don't remember what he said about this one. Let me go with this one. I didn't research with this one at all, admittedly, for the Genesis 30, 37 through 42. I had forgotten to. I'd completely forgotten about it. Let's see. And Jacob took him rods of green poplar and of the hazel and chestnut tree, and pilled white strakes in them, and made the white appear which was in the rods. And he set the rods which he had pilled before the flocks in the gutters, in the watering troughs, when the flocks came to drink, that they should conceive when they came to drink. And the flocks conceived before the rods, and brought forth cattle, ring-straked, speckled, and spotted. All right. So let's go over this.
42 says that goats make spotted babies in the presence of striped sticks. What? These are
okay. So that's not what it said. That's just okay. 37:24. So hard to. Let's. Okay, there we go. That is not what it said. It is talking about the fact that, like, I'm just looking at this because I didn't study for this one, so apologies on that. I've completely forgotten about this one, but that's not what it says. What it says is that he did these things, right? And then the flocks conceived before the rods, and brought forth cattle, ring-straked, speckled, and spotted. I don't think that he's saying that it's necessarily linked because of the rods that were set before, right? And it's not putting this as a universal law either. It's not demonstrating that at all. All right.
2 says that goats make spotted babies in the presence of striped sticks. What? These are the right.
I mean, they can. I mean, it doesn't say that, doesn't mean that it has the influence of it, but it can happen, I guess. So,
writings of pre-scientific men with a tenuous grasp of the world around them. This becomes.
So he's going to go into the classifications here for a bit, and there's one section in particular I want to get to. It was, what was it, 42, 45 or so? Yeah, he talks about that. Let's go to 42:33.
Is there, and if the documents in a folder become too numerous and diverse, you will likely create some new folders to further organize your documents. The same goes for.
So he's talking about classification, how classification works, and he's saying, well, it's not always easy. It's not always clear cut on everything. And let's continue on.
Phylogeny, which in the end is an arbitrary system of classification invented by humans.
He talks about it right here. So I just got it right in time. He talks about the fact, he just admitted what I just said, where it is talking about an arbitrary system that we just use for convenience. It's not something that nature itself demands. We have classifications based upon how we have decided to classify things. So, and this gets to be the problem I have with a lot of like atheists, especially new atheist types, where so clearly the arguments that they are making are not done out of a mere intellectual pursuit, right? It is so often done with this mentality of I hate scripture, I hate God, I hate um I hate the admission that God is the creator, right? So an argument that I make, I'm not going to self-critique. Here he is admitting that the system is arbitrary, this phylogenetic system, right?
Things get trickier when considering interbreeding. Sometimes different species can interbreed. A horse and a donkey can make a mule. Typically, such offspring are infertile, but sometimes they are fertile. Wolf-dog hybrids, bison-cattle hybrids, various birds, it absolutely can happen. Creationists would say that this challenges the biological definition of species, and with some justification. The definition can't be applied flawlessly without exception. It's just a guideline. Nature does not care about the words we use. It does what it does. But our inability to trap nature in our attempt at rigid categorization is in no way evidence against evolutionary principles.
He literally is admitting, yes, the classifications are kind of messy, and nature itself, he says, does not care. Well, why do we have to care if God classifies things the way that we, and I'm not even saying necessarily that God is classifying it in that particular way, because this is another thing I should have brought up before. It's important to understand that God speaks to us where we are at, right? So when the scriptures are being written at any time, God is not going to be like, well, no, wait, we need to, and I did talk a little bit about this part, but I'll emphasize it more. No, wait, we need to use 20th or 21st century categories and biological definitions of the species and all that sort of stuff. We cannot use the system that is now because it's not as efficient. No, that's not how it works. God speaks to people where they are at, right? It's just a silly demand upon the text and the idea of like, well, nope, it can't be God because he's not using our modern classification system. That's like denying that it's literally like denying that God wrote the Bible because they don't use our modern calendar in the Bible. It's just silly. It is idiotic, right? So again, and that's basically it. I mean, I don't have much more. Maybe I can go to the festival still. I don't know. We'll see. I have to mow the lawn too. We'll see what happens. But that's it for today. Basically, I used to like Dave. I used to watch his videos. I have unsubscribed a year or two ago, probably 2 years ago. I wrote a comment here too and had a little bit of debate with some people. And Dave responded. He's right there. See the little head thing. Yeah, that's it. This was just more of a almost chill streamish kind of thing. Let me see if there are any questions I want to bring to you. I know you're not a pre-supper, but they would have a field day with Dave. I mean, as a classical apologist, I'm having a field day with his presupposition. Like presuppers are not the only ones who point out presuppositions, right? I mean, I'm not saying that you're saying that necessarily, but let's see, missing trails. I think it really comes down to the pride of advancement. We think we are smarter, wiser, more correct, and more moral than our ancestors, all the while unappreciatively benefiting from their labors. Yeah, it's the chronological snobbery kind of thing that C.S. Lewis talks about. Let's see. That pic looks like Mississippi and Alabama. I'm not sure what. All right. Never did I think that I would see Dave appearing on this channel. Hope to see a good stream from you, James. Yeah, thank you. That's it, basically. I mean, it's just, again, you can hold to evolution and everything that Dave agreed. You can be an atheist, right? But still agree with what I'm pointing out here. It's it's just a wrong way to think, and Dave himself admits it by pointing out that these are arbitrary systems and classifications. So if they're arbitrary classifications, then why do you demand that a particular classification be put in the Bible, or else the Bible is objectively wrong? It does not make sense. It is like demanding that a particular calendar be used in the Bible, or that Bible is wrong. It is like demanding that you put the bookshelf in a particular order, or you are wrong. It's just a silly argument. Anyway, hope you all have a good day, good weekend. Go ahead and get ready for Holy Communion tomorrow, which will be a wonderful time where we can worship our Lord and Savior. God bless and have a good day.